I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before delivering my statement, and on this auspicious first day of Ramadan, I extend heartfelt Ramadan Mubarak wishes to all celebrants, especially to our sister and brother in the occupied Palestinian territories, who endure the brutality of occupation. Mr. President, we listened carefully to the briefing from Madame Pater, and we took note of it. I wish to emphasize the principles position of my country, Algeria. No one, man or woman, regardless of their nationality, religion, or origin, should endure the horror of sexual violence. Such acts are clearly condemned by our religion, Islam, and those responsible must face severe consequences within the bounds of law. It is imperative that fully fledged investigations into incidents of this nature are conducted with the utmost seriousness and diligence. We call for international independent investigations on all sexual violence in this region, as suggested by SRSG, Madame Patten. We had hoped for Mrs. Patten to be granted authorization to visit numerous detention centers where the human rights of Palestinians are being violated, with more than 3,884 detainees are held administratively, means without trial. Also, her presence in the Gaza Strip would have allowed her to witness firsthand the extent of sexual abuse inflicted upon Palestinians by the occupying forces and convey them to the international community. Mr. President, for decades now, Palestinian women have borne the impact of a relentless assault, enduring discrimination and unspeakable violence on multiple fronts. The Palestinian population, and specifically women, have been subjected to a countless of brutalities, violating the very essence of their humanity and dignity. This plight, however, is not a recent phenomenon. It has persisted throughout the enduring occupation and exacerbated by a deliberate policy of collective punishment. And those responsible often remained shielded by a robe of impunity. A robe of impunity. Since 2001, despite the filing of 1,400 complaints by Palestinians regarding acts of torture, only 3 criminal investigations have been initiated. Surprisingly, Surprisingly, none of these investigations have led to any indictment. None of these investigations have led to any indictment. In a terrifying incident in 2022, Israeli authorities labeled the NGO Defense for Children International Palestine as a terrorist entity. Why? Because they revealed the rape of a 15-year-old Palestinian child by Israeli military forces. This grim reality underscores that under occupations, Palestinians find no refuge from injustice. The systematic violation of the human right of Palestinian women is a grave injustice, violating their right to life, to health, to education, and to sustenance. And yet, accountability is a banned concept when the victims are Palestinians. Mr. President, although it is painful for me to mention them as mere numbers, they are not numbers. They are about human beings who have their dreams, who have their dignity stolen from them. Consider this staggering statistic. 30,000 Palestinians killed by the Israeli forces since the 7th of October. 9,000 of them were women. Among 70,000 wounded, 75% of them are women. Of the 7,000 missing persons, 70% are women and children. From the nearly 2 million forcibly displaced persons, 50% are females. Palestinians' human rights organizations report intensified arrest operations by the Israeli occupation force, particularly affecting women. More than 8,000 Palestinians were arrested since October 7th. This is an alarming situation where visits to prisons are denied and arrests go unreported to the ICRC. This alarming situation has raised the concern of UN experts who expressed serious concern about the arbitrary detention of hundreds of Palestinians, women and girls, many of them subjected to inhumane and degrading treatment. Instances have been reported where Palestinian women in Gaza were kept in a cage, in the rain and cold without food. UN experts express also deep distress over reports detailing physical and psychological abuses against Palestinian women and girls in detention, indicating that they have suffered many forms of sexual assault. Rape have been inflicted upon at least 2 female Palestinian detainees, with others threatened and intimidated with sexual violence. Mr. President, what the Palestinians, particularly women, endure is a litmus test for the credibility of international law and the global framework outlined in Security Council resolution. The consequences of our inaction may deal a disabling blow from which recovery is deterring. I conclude with the poignant word of Madame Paula Gaviria Betancourt, the UN Special Rapporteur of Human Rights of Internally Displaced Persons, who stated, and I quote, "The international community must relinquish the illusion that Israel will respect the principle of international humanitarian and human rights laws in its military operation. It is imperative to halt this atrocity immediately. This requires an urgent imposition by the Security Council of a ceasefire in Gaza." I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement.